Now let's talk about my flea market strategy. I actually have a lot of strategy that I've developed over years and years of going to flea markets, selling at flea markets, and buying at flea markets. I'm going to give you just a little taste of it. I actually have a complete course on flea markets on Udemy, but here I'm going to give you like some of the most powerful tips that you can get for flea market strategy. One is the early bird catches the worm. It's an old saying and it's so true. I used to go to this local flea market. It was an antique flea market in Long Beach, California called Veterans Stadium. It's held at a stadium and it's one of my favorite ones because I always seem to find great stuff there. Well, I used to go at opening time, which was 9 a.m. and we'd be in line with a bunch of other people, and I would notice that there were people walking out with armfuls of treasures, tons and tons of goodies. One day, a friend of mine who was a fellow Hot Wheels collector walked out and he showed me a very rare variation of a Mustang Hot Wheels car. It was a $400 car and he had picked it up for $40 or $50. And when he told me that he got it because he was in the early bird line, he got in early. I was there in line at 9 a.m. That's what totally changed my thinking and got me started going to that flea market at 5:30 a.m. I knew then that the early bird got the worm, and I was taught a very strong lesson there that you don't want to be late to a flea market where there's tons and tons of goodies. There's been so many times when I've missed items because I was either a little too late or a little too slow in getting to that item, and I arrive at a stand to see somebody buying something that would be just amazing. And so the early bird catches the worm applies not only to trying to get in earlier than the general public, and most antique flea markets have an early bird admission. They have a period of time, maybe between 5:30 and 6:30, and then other ones have them between 6:30 and 9 when they open to the general public, where you pay a little bit more in order to get in a little bit earlier. And let me tell you, that extra $5 or $10 is completely worth it because you'll run into deals that nobody else will see because they came in too late. The next strategy is speed walking through the aisles. And what I mean by this is you are almost running and scanning. You're walking very fast through all the aisles. Your goal is to go through the entire flea market twice, maybe even 3 times if it's really good. What this does, it allows you to scan through a lot of items and a lot of sellers in a shorter period of time and land on the items that are going to be highly profitable for you quicker. In other words, before somebody else does. And so there's there's a real urgency to this. This is not your casual stroll through a flea market like most people do on a Sunday morning. This is really a purposeful, focused, intense search for those items that you're looking for. And that is one big tip because basically you have to think of it as it's a race between you and the other person, and you want to win the prize. Remember that everything is negotiable at a flea market. Those sellers are there to sell. They're not there to hang on to things. They're not there for their health, and they're not there to have a museum. They're there to sell. So be sure to make an offer. Don't just accept their price, and you'd be amazed at how willing these sellers are to negotiate. Here's a strategy I call the pick it up and hang on to it strategy. If you find an item that is really unusual, or you're kind of wondering whether you should buy it or not, hang on to it. I had one experience once that taught me this lesson. I was at a toy show in Pasadena, California. It was early in my Hot Wheels collecting career. I didn't know that much about the prices. I wasn't that certain about the values. So I picked up a classic Nomad Hot Wheels car, still in the package, from 1970. It was a beautiful car. It was light green. And I asked the seller, how much for this car? And he said, $40. And I looked at it and I thought about it. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of money. And I was fairly new to that toy show, so I still wanted to look around, and I figured I would come back and maybe buy it later, right? The split second I put it down, the person next to me picked it up and said, you want $40 for this? He said, yeah. Here you go. Instantly, I knew I'd made a mistake. Instantly, I knew that that price was awesome and I should have bought it. So, the moral to that story is if you pick something up and you're not sure about it, you're questioning whether you should buy it or not, hang on to it. Don't put it down until you make your real final decision, because that might happen to you. The person next to you or somebody around you will pick it up and buy it right out from under you. So keep that in mind. And then I like the concept of bundling. You know, when you can bundle a bunch of different items together in one shot, you can end up getting a much better price because the person sees that you're buying multiple items. They're willing to give you a better deal. And here's a very important question. Do you have any more of these? This is great when you've found an incredible deal and you always want to ask this question. I once found an incredible deal on Star Wars action figures. These were action figures that were being sold for $4 each or 3 for 10. And when I asked the guy how much were they, he said $4 each or 3 for 10. This was early on again in my eBay career, and I went to a phone booth. This was before cell phones, by the way, and called my friend Cal at the antique toy store where I sold antique toys and asked him about this particular figure. I didn't know that much about it. And he said, Dave, they're selling here for $120. Buy them all. So I ran back to the seller and I said, how much for all of them? And so he started counting them out and he said $60 for all of them. And I was like, okay, here you go. I gave him $60. Then I asked this important question. Do you have any more of these? He said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do at my thrift store. So immediately I got his number, set up a time to go to his thrift store, gave him another $60 and bought a ton of these action figures. These were very special and collectible Star Wars action figures. And they weren't old. They were just a special theater edition they had handed out at the movie theaters. And I made a little over $2,000 on a $120 investment. Part of the reason I made that much money is I asked this question right here. Do you have any more of these? Very, very important question when you find a great deal that you know you can make money on.